Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our backyard. Today I'd like to talk to you about Cigar Plant, or Cuphea as it is known. And this particular plant that I'm showing you right here is a hybrid called David Verity, and it is one of the taller Cuphea plants. Cuphea's claim to fame is they have long orange actually they're very narrow tubular flowers that end in a yellow or cream colored opening. And hummingbirds and butterflies love this plant. David Verity is probably one of my favorite Cupheas, and it's a long time variety. I think developed. You can read about it, just Google it and read about it in the late 60s and early 70s. And it can get up to be 4 to 5 feet tall. This year, our Cuphea struggled a little bit, and it was super, super hot. But this was a decision I made. I have this Cuphea, this is its second year, and I have it in a pot in our tree bed, and it's a nice sized large pot. The thing that I did this year is when I protected it during our really, really bad freeze, I put it in the garage, and it never froze, but it lost all of its leaves. And so when I brought it back out, I pruned it to where it recommended pruning to where the branches were still green. So I pruned it down to that. And I noticed where I wanted to see what was going to happen, and those branches never did grow new growth. So I think, bringing it down to, soil level or a little bit above would have been much better for this plant. And I was surprised that it lost all of its leaves, and I thought it was dead. It wasn't, but if I had it to do all over again, I would do that differently, because this plant last year was huge. It's nice this year. I can see my lantana next to it has a couple of sprigs that are growing up really nicely in there, which is pretty. I like that. I like the rose lantana in with the Cuphea here. But this is a big magnet and a big draw, and the reason I'll always have Cuphea in my yard is because, or cigar plant it's also called, is because it is such a hit with the pollinators. And you would think only hummingbirds would want to would get at this nectar, but I tell you, butterflies land on them. The bees are pretty savvy. Let me get close here. They know how to get in right down at the base and just steal the nectar from there. So the native pollinators really, really appreciate this plant also. So this happens to be David Verity, and it is in full sun. It will bloom from spring through frost, and if you don't have a frost, it will even bloom in the winter time. So it is such a wonderful plant to have in the southern pollinator garden. It is hardy to zone 8B. I do have it in a pot though, so that makes it a little bit trickier because you do lose a zone. And I don't know if I'm going to bring it in and protect it this year. Just because of what I experienced. So in full sun, it grows really well. Let me show you David Verity not in full sun. Okay, so I have 4 large pots on my small concrete patio, and my 3 large pots that I have beautiful tropical hibiscus and get full sun until about 2:33 in the afternoon, typically in the summer. Now that the the light has changed. The sun has changed its course because, of course, we're now in October. That has changed. The light patterns have changed. But my large pot on the end here, I wanted to plant another Cuphea, and it doesn't get quite as much. Well, it doesn't. It's more under partial shade than this beautiful tropical hibiscus, which is amazing to me. So this is David Verity, and it's not been happy in this spot. It's in a beautiful, wonderful large pot, and it only has bloomed over here very little, what's closest to the most sun. And so this shows, even though it says Cuphea can get partial sun, this would get heavy sun from like noon until 2. Of course it got dappled sun, and it was shaded then in the afternoon from our house. But you can see Cuphea needs that full sun, and so I left it here just to see what it was going to do, and it does not appreciate its life in not full sun. All right, now I want to show you a different variety. This is the second year in this particular pot of a variety called Vermillionaire, and I'm going to bring up the tag. This plant is in full sun. It says it's from Proven Winners, called Vermillionaire. It gets 18 to 28 inches tall. I'm going to turn its tag over. And it is hardy through 8A. So it's a little hardier than David Verity. It says it's hardy to about 10 degrees. I brought this in last year again, just because we had that really terrible freeze around Christmas of 2022. And I have had it in this container with a Russellia and my hummingbirds. Both of them are hummingbird favorites. So this is the flower, from the Russellia. And my hummingbird that has stayed with us all summer long loves this flower. Let me have one. Is this one open? This one's open. She comes every day for all the flowers, but she goes to this one first. She loves this Russellia, which is also called a firecracker plant. And in with it, I have the Vermillionaire, and Vermillionaire is also the Cuphea, which is a cigar plant. And I've been happy with Vermillionaire. It is a little smaller than the David Verity. It works very nicely in this pot with the Russellia because they both bloom very well. And probably the biggest mistake that I made is I should have cut it and trimmed it down in the spring, and I didn't. So it's a little woody, closer to the pot, and that is a learning for me that I will probably be cutting this down fairly heavily in the spring. But I've been real happy with this, with Vermillionaire. Let me show you another one that I potted. So this Vermillionaire is in my southern corner that I've showed you before. Let me back out a little bit. Ooh, sorry, I had a bee buzz me here. Didn't mean to jerk the camera like that. And this Vermillionaire I potted up this spring, and I've been very happy. It is in full sun, and I've been happy with its growth. Hasn't bloomed as much. It might be a tad bit crowded here because it's next to other plants, but it's gotten really good airflow, good sun. It's just been super, super hot with that heat dome that we had. But I've been very happy with this. And the reason I have 4 of these plants scattered around my yard is just because of how they flower. This one's not flowering as much at the moment. But the leaves are a really pretty color. The blooms are nice and dainty. And they're such a draw to all the pollinators. Love the coloring of the leaf. I really like the structure. I like how the plant looks. It doesn't have showy flowers, as you can see when I step back. You know, they don't show up except when it's in full bloom and there's orange all over the plant. Then it is just absolutely gorgeous. But right now they're just somewhat semi-blooming. And I never fertilized a lot during the heat of our summer just because it was too hot, you know, over 100 degrees, and I wasn't forcing that issue. And so now I've got a good month before we're even probably going to have cold temperatures that's going to affect blooming. And so I probably need to do one last fertilizing that is just the nice boost in fertilizer, the liquid fertilizer, which will help most of my Cuphea, because all of my Cuphea are in pots. There are over 200 varieties of cigar plants or Cuphea, and so what I've shown you are some real popular types that you'll find at your local nurseries, more than likely. But there are others out there like bat-faced. There's other colors of flowers out there, and there's also ones that don't have these long tubes. And so they're very interesting. If you are interested in pollinators, you know, inviting pollinators into your gardens, especially hummingbirds and butterflies and native bees, this would be really a good plant to consider. I've heard and read many other hummingbird gardeners that say this plant is probably the hummingbird's favorite. In my yard, I wouldn't necessarily say it's the favorite. It's certainly one that they go to. Right next to it, I have salvia, which hummingbirds absolutely love. And in the background over there, I have porterweed. I have lots of different types of flowers and blooms in the yard, all over the yard, that hummingbirds love. So they don't necessarily go to this first. They do visit it. So I don't perceive it to be as the most popular in my yard, is what I'm trying to say, but it's certainly one that is a staple that they go to regularly, and I will have this in my yard in some form or fashion always, because it is such a draw. And, you know, nectar wise, it's worth its weight in gold in how it performs and how long it performs, from spring all the way up until frost, if you have a frost. Some places where it doesn't frost, you know, freeze, it will bloom almost year round. So that's another consideration for you to think about on this really, really useful and beautiful plant. All right, everyone. Well, I thank you for joining me today. It's gorgeous this morning. It's like in the 60s. It feels so good. Oh. Well, I hope you have a wonderful day today. And I hope to see you again.